Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it will be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. What happens when engineering students are asked to truck-proof a mailbox? Yes, I know there are a lot of mailbox stories on here, but I just learned this story from my dad involving my Uncle Dale, family friend who passed away a few months ago. And I figured you guys would get a kick out of it. Years ago, back when Uncle Dale and Dad were university students, their engineering professor came to their class with a problem that needed solving. His mailbox was getting broken by someone driving by every single night. He and his wife had put up something like 4 or 5 mailboxes, and all 4 or 5 times a mailbox had been knocked over by someone driving a red truck. This professor offered extra credit to any group of students who could come up with a truck-proof mailbox that not only fit with city regulations, but within a budget of $20. Which back then was a good-sized chunk of change. Well, if anyone here knows anything about engineers, as Dad puts it, they love solving problems. And if it's engineering students, they will make it an experience to remember. Dad and Uncle Dale got together and got to work. They found a steel bar that fit within mailbox regulations. Posts have to be a specific height, width, and depth. And they filled the inside with a mixture of concrete and steel rebars. Once the concrete had cured, they welded 8 rebars to the sides of the bar, bent them in half, and stuck it inside a bucket. To add extra weight, they filled the bucket with the heaviest rocks they could find. As a finishing touch, they painted it brown and black, just to look like wood, and put the ugliest mailbox we could find on sale on top, welding it down for good measure. They brought this monstrosity into class, more dragged it because it was so heavy, and told the professor to bury the bucket where the mailbox stood. Since they were the first to turn in their project, the professor agreed to give it a try. And that night, the professor and his wife were awoken by a metallic bang, followed by a lot of cursing. They went outside and wouldn't you know it, there was that red truck speeding away. The mailbox still standing, and at the base was a broken wooden baseball bat. 2 days later, the professor gets a bill in the mail for a hospital visit. Turns out, when the passenger hit the mailbox, he did some serious damage to his arm and shoulder. They were planning on suing the professor, but the professor hired a lawyer who basically told the plaintiffs, "You're just going to admit that you were vandalizing the mailbox multiple times?" And that shut them up. To the best of my dad's knowledge, the mailbox is still standing. The other students who still brought in mailboxes had theirs gifted to different professors throughout the town and are also still standing to this day. Next story. My uncle took revenge on behalf of my parents. As the title gives away, this did not happen to me, but it's the story of how my uncle avenged my parents. My parents had me when they were plenty young. They were not teens anymore, but had barely left that age bracket. My mom and dad met in college, and that was also when they had me. So while my parents were in their courses, I mostly stayed with my grandparents. The whole family lives in the same area, and the college was not that far away. My parents were still young and liked to go out with friends on occasion. When the following happened, I was a few years old. On occasion, they frequented the bar. A drunk guy there harassed my mom and did not take no for an answer. My dad intervened and stopped the guy. And half an hour later, all seemed forgotten. The music was so loud and the bar was crowded, and then someone in the crowd hit my dad with an empty glass pitcher square in the face. He was bleeding profusely and collapsed. But in the press, semi-darkness, and over the music, no one knew who did it. My dad got taken to the hospital. He had a broken nose and a heavy concussion. He also couldn't see who attacked him, and his memory between the alcohol and being hit in the head was also very fuzzy. Of course, they had considered the guy who had harassed my mom earlier, but they didn't know him, nor did they see him anywhere leading up to this moment, let alone have any evidence. So they pressed charges against the unknown. But there was virtually nothing anyone could do. But then a few days later, that piece of crap that harassed my mom approached her on campus. Turns out he was in the same college as my parents. He made a few veiled comments and left little doubt that it had been him that hit my dad in the face. And the piece of garbage let my mom know that my dad next time should mind his own manners. And then the little flirting he had done did not hurt anyone. It wasn't even that bad. And if he wanted to do it again, he would, and maybe some more. And then that jerk went on his merry way. My mom was horrified, of course. She went home and told my grandparents, my dad, and his parents. But no one could do anything. It was a he said she said deal after all. And my mom hadn't even gotten the guy's name. My mom cried a lot at that time and didn't know what to do. She also was afraid of going to classes or out alone. I honestly only remember that time very scarcely. I was just a little kid. But I can remember my dad in the hospital with his broken nose. And I can remember my mom crying a lot. My dad, of course, was just as angry and humiliated as my mom. No one knew what to do, and everyone was treading on eggshells around each other. But that is where my uncle enters the stage. My uncle, my mother's brother, lived on the other side of the country. He was a PI, and he was, of course, the last to hear the full story. But the moment he heard someone had threatened his little sister, he was on his way home. After hearing the full story, my uncle knew it would likely be hard to get the guy on the harassment, the assault, or the threats, having no evidence at all. My uncle had my mom point the guy out from afar on campus. It took a few days to find him, but then my uncle started to stalk that piece of human filth. My uncle took sick days, all his vacation, and invested every second possible to find out everything about the harasser. My uncle even approached the big in another bar and became drinking buddies with him. Over several weeks, my uncle had uncovered all manners of illicit behavior, possession, consumption, and distribution of drugs, and even theft, and a few other misdemeanors and small-time stuff. My uncle could have put him away for that, but my uncle always said, when asked about it, that if he sent that jerk to prison, it would be for molesting my mom and hurting my dad. And that is what he did. One night, while out with his new buddy drinking, my uncle made the idiot piss drunk and they landed in my uncle's motel room. He got the harasser to incriminate himself on video, rattling off a list of illegal stuff he was up to. My uncle had of course pretended to be a crook too. Among the stories the jerk told was a story of how he harassed some chick and pranked her dude with a pitcher of beer. Now something needs to be said. In my country, of course, recording someone in secret is illegal, and under some conditions, like if the police does it, it is not a permissible piece of evidence in court. But as a PI, my uncle knew the laws for that exactly. But paradoxically, the situation is different if it's not only audio but also video. And my uncle had that jerk on camera confessing. The next day, my uncle turned himself into the police with all his collected evidence, because secretly filming people was still a crime. Though the video could be used as evidence in court, as my uncle was not affiliated with the police or any other governmental agency. When the criminal trial and the civil trial were over, the jerk got 6 years in prison and had to pay damages to my mom and dad. And my uncle, he got slapped with the equivalent of a $2,000 fine for secretly filming that jerk. Money well spent, he always said. Next story. Brent tries to get me fired, but I turn the tables. Context: I'm a year 9 student, British schooling system, and go to a very good school. This is a massive privilege to have, and I'm massively thankful for it. Our school has a magazine which we print and distribute to teachers, students, and parents. And it is very popular. I'm fortunate enough to be the assistant editor of the magazine. I basically format and check the magazine while making sure everyone in the committee is doing well. And it's hard work. As part of this role, I have to teach and mentor the new students and get them used to the new system. Being in the committee is like having a job. So, balancing it with school is tough. And lots of newbies drop out very quickly when they begin to realize that they can't handle the workload. I enjoy teaching the new guys, as it's mostly people who love writing as much as I do, and it really gives us a connection that does stick around. However, last year I had a very bad mentoree whom I dislike to this very day. The cast? Me? The very cool and kind teacher and head editor of the magazine? The jerk mentoree? One of my best friends. Now I knew that jerk before he joined the committee. We were friends. We've been into town with each other a bit, and we were good mates. So I was excited to be mentoring him. The way mentoring works is that there are 7 tasks to complete and have checked by your mentor, leading up to a big review 6 weeks after one first joins. The tasks are fairly easy. Learn how to Photoshop pictures for the photographers and learn the formatting of the articles to make my life easier. Now I teach the mentorees in a way which means that I set them a task. Example, task 1. And it has a deadline which I will take in the work. Check it and give the feedback on. It works well, and I have always done the mentoring this way. When I set the first task for the jerk, I was really confident in his ability, because we were, and still are, at a really good school. I genuinely believed that he would do it and I'd have no problems whatsoever. However, as you probably guessed it, I was very wrong. When it was time for his first task to be checked, this happened. I ask him where's the work, and he answers, I wasn't able to do it. Why? It was a fairly simple task. If you had any problems, I told you to ask me about them. Well, the thing is, The jerk takes a massive pressing. I expect the worst. My dad just got in a really bad car accident and I've been at the hospital the past few days. I was shocked. This guy's dad was in intensive care and I was ready to give him a hard time for not doing some work. I immediately apologized and almost had a panic attack. I gave him an extra week to do his work. I was a terrible person. I went home and sobbed about how mean I was ready to be. I came in the next day and avoided him as much as possible. At this point, I didn't even suspect anything. When it came to his second task and the first task as well, being checked, I was nervous but prepared. I asked, how did you find the work? I couldn't finish either of them. At this point, I was just pissed. He told me privately that he wasn't in the hospital as much anymore. So I was confused. Come on, this is starting to get silly. Your review is soon, and you haven't even started the tasks. It's because my cat got put down. It was really old and I've had it since birth, so I was really attached to it. This really made me upset. I have 2 cats, and I love them to pieces. I couldn't even imagine their deaths. So I told the jerk I was sorry, but he needed to either get the work done or take an official break and leave the committee briefly. This gets put on a report which is kept by the cool teacher, and it's about the bad things a person in the committee had done. This back and forth of work? Nope, and here is why. It went on until literally the day before his review. I had sat down with him and spoke to him about how he had not done any of the work and had 6+ hours of work to do for the next day. He was really apologetic, but I had become totally immune to his shenanigans by this point. It really ticked me off. By this point, I didn't know if he was lying or not. But I had my suspicions. Then his review came around. I was terrified. You see, as his mentor, if he does badly, I get in trouble for not doing my job well. I'm a massive goody two-shoes. I have never had a detention, and I was petrified of getting one as my parents would not approve. The jerk, the cool teacher, and I sat down, and when the cool teacher asks to see the work, the jerk says he hasn't got any of it. Before I can interrupt and explain the situation, the jerk goes on to say that he had handed in all of the work, but I had said that none of it was good enough, and that I threw it all out before the review, and the cool teacher gave me a death stare. I was crapping bricks. In my first year of being in the committee, I had lied to the cool teacher about doing some work. This had been put on my report, and I got screamed at for 15 minutes straight. He said I had delayed printing by over a week, and I was incompetent and so on. We moved past it, and now we enjoy each other's company very much. And essentially, if I made any mistakes, I was getting fired. I looked at the jerk, shocked about what he said, and I stuttered to the cool teacher the actual situation and all the lies he told me. The cool teacher did not believe me, as not so long ago I had lied. I then made it my absolute mission to prove everything he had told me and the cool teacher wrong. But there was one problem. I did not arrange anything over a traceable source. I hadn't emailed him or texted him, other than a Snapchat. But that deletes messages after being read. It looked like I was going to get fired, and I only had a few days to prove my innocence before I was gone. The plan. That evening I went into town with some friends. The jerk wasn't present, and I sat down with a best friend of mine. She was texting the jerk on iMessage, a key detail. So I told her what happened about the committee and the jerk, and she was shocked. And thankfully she believed me over the jerk. And this is when a plan was hatched. Firstly, I needed evidence, and best friend gave me exactly what I needed. She took the jerk into town on a date as he liked her. She then began a conversation about she heard I was being nominated for an award about my writing for the school magazine. This was actually true. I won an award for England's Young Journalist of the Year and Best Featured Article about my sister for something she achieved. My best friend then set her phone to record the entire conversation. And this included the jerk admitting to screw me over so he could eventually take my position as assistant editor. My best friend then sent this to me, and I stored it on my computer in sweet revenge. I sent the voice message to the cool teacher, and he too was shocked. He apologized profusely to me, and I told him that I didn't want him to fire the jerk yet, and then told him my plan. He was worried, but on board because of what he did to me. I met with the jerk the next day to apologize for being too harsh about his tasks, and beg for him to retract his statement about me. He obviously said no. As protocol states, I had to give other members my ongoing articles, and I gave the jerk my award-winning article and said that I had changed so it was talking about a different girl rather than my sister. However, I actually changed it to make it horribly inappropriate. Like disgustingly. He thanked me and left. The next few weeks I didn't show up to any meetings and made it seem like I had actually been kicked out. But I stayed aware of the situation in the committee and kept up to date on my articles. Because this was the kind of person he was, the jerk didn't even read the article I had sent him before he handed it in. So the cool teacher received a heavily sexist article which the jerk wrote supposedly. The cool teacher called the jerk into his room and the jerk was screamed at for writing such a horrible article. Then played the voice tape back for him so he knew that he'd been caught. The head teacher of the school found out about the article the jerk had written and the jerk was put in isolation. You get taught on your own in a separate room where you spend lunch and break and so on for a whole week. He was also fired from the committee immediately and got a mark on his permanent record. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.